Hello and welcome to another episode of Speed Mentorship. My name is Matt Mackler, your host. Well, here on Speed Mentorship, our goal is to help you be a leader that others want to follow. We're going to do that by interviewing top-notch leaders who are world-class at what they do. We're going to ask them fun and challenging questions to get to the root of what ultimately makes them successful.
And with that, we have our guest today, Sean Savage. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, appreciate it, Matt. It's an honor.
Very cool. So, first question I got for you is just a little bit of background about yourself.
All right. Well, I'm the eighth of 9 children, Toledo, Ohio, and I attended St. John's Jesuit for high school and Miami, Ohio for college and in the School of Business. Met my wife in college. And convinced her to come back to Toledo, which wasn't an easy thing to convince her to do because she's not from the area. But she bought in, and so we've been back here, have 6 children, and have been involved with our family business for decades now.
So, it's somebody at your level, at your skill set, at what you do. What are some of the things that you typically do on a day-to-day basis? Whether it's in the morning or in between, things. What does your daily routine look like?
Well, I think it's really, I think it's kind of a mindset of how you look at life. So I look at my life through kind of 3 lenses, and one of them is my career, which is really important, but also through service. Which is kind of the second component, and then family is a third component. So I approach every day with those 3 lenses in mind, and focus attention on all 3 of them throughout a day. So my career is also, I consider it a hobby. So I enjoy what I do. Yeah. So if I'm talking to somebody at 8 at night, regarding my work, I have no problem with that. If my wife calls me for an issue at 2 p.m, I'll embrace that and talk about the family. If I'm working on a project or a board, and we have, important items to deal with. So I don't look at everything as a separation in life. I look at it as, hey, this is my mission. This is what I'm trying to accomplish, and let's go ahead and embrace all 3 throughout the day.
Solid. And from a success standpoint, what are some of the things that you think contribute to your success? Like what kind of successful habits throughout a day or a week do you do that give you kind of the energy level that you need to be successful?
Well, the one thing I do, and it started back in my 20s, and that was I take some time every weekend and just to myself, and I kind of visualize what the week is going to be. Yeah. And I get out the calendar, I look to see what we have on the docket, and I lay out what my priorities are for the week, and then and kind of put it all down so that I have a roadmap every single week that I'm following. And those involve also not only, once again, work related items, which that's the bulk of the list. Yeah. But it also involves other things that I want to get accomplished in life, and so things carry over week to week, and some of them are longer projects, some of them are shorter. But I don't want to wake up Monday or even go to bed Sunday night and feel comfortable, because I know a lot of people get that anxiety, as they go into the next week. And I think it's a great way for me to just, feel like as I lay my head down on the pillow Sunday night, I know what's coming. I know what I want to accomplish, and we go get it.
Yeah. You're also an avid runner as well, right?
Yeah, so. I am. Yeah. So some would say a little bit over the top, but I run every morning. Yeah. With sometimes solo, usually with a couple other people, about 6:15 in the morning, and it's so running's a daily habit. In fact, I got a 6-year running streak right now, every day.
That's incredible.
And so we're trying to keep
running streak. It's
going to break. My mantra is, I know it's going to end someday. Yeah. I just don't want it to be today. Yeah. So if I can figure out a way to do it, it's typically going to, I think it'll be injury or illness. Yeah. But usually I've faced both in those 6 years, but not enough that I wasn't able to get it done that day.
Okay. And obviously in leadership and in life in general, one of the things we all struggle with is we all got weaknesses. We all have things, we're good at some things, we're not good at some things. How do you, look at your weaknesses? And I think importantly is how do you cope and handle with some of those weaknesses on a weekly basis or just in life in general?
Yeah, it's interesting. I was given great advice many years ago, and that was play to your strengths, because if you try to work on your weaknesses will become strong weaknesses.
That's really good.
And so, I think you're much better off saying, where is my, where am I at my best? Where am I of best value to those that I'm serving? Yeah. And then the areas that you're just not good in, which for me, paperwork items, mundane tasks that are associated with the work that we do. Also, I would say meetings that are non-client meetings for me drive me crazy for the most part, and that is within my industry. So what I do is I try to delegate all my weaknesses, and so I look for people around me, part of my team, that are strong in my areas of weaknesses, and they love to do the things that I hate to do. Okay, and so I think that really makes for a team, and then it allows me just to spend my time building on my strengths, which is really, I think, for what people want out of you, that is my best value I can bring. Is my best value is working and building on those strengths.
So on one side you got weaknesses, on another side, we all deal with this every day. You mentioned anxiety a little bit, but stress, is a huge part. And I think it's an important question, because I see some of the top leaders. And one of the biggest differentiators between some of these top leaders is how they manage and cope through stress. I'd be curious, what are some of the things that you do to manage and cope with either your stress or anxiety on a daily basis?
Yeah. So something, nobody knows day to day what's gonna land on your plate that is a big problem, or a real challenge. And so when those things happen, and they are the most stress-causing events, and when they happen, my reaction is to tackle that right away. Yeah. Because otherwise, if you just put it on the back burner, number one, it becomes a bigger problem. Yeah. Number two, it's going to be just sitting there. You have a little voice talking to your head. You got that problem. So it's better to say, you know what, I'm going to go after that right away. And so I think that's an important way to alleviate the stress.
Okay.
I also think my exercise, I really believe this, that it is a meditational process for me when I'm running. And so I do like to have a number of days a week where I'm alone running, because so many of the issues that I have or stressors, a lot of the resolution and ideas and thoughts come through that running. And I can't explain it other than it's just been my experience throughout my adult life. And even as a youngster, when I finish, I feel just better about myself. I feel like, hey, I've thought some things through, and now I have a little bit better roadmap that I don't think on my own, without that running, I would have necessarily had the time or put aside the time. Because the one other piece of advice that it was interesting, a local CEO here that shared with me is, he said it's important that in the work of leadership that you actually spend time just to think, because so many people spend all their time doing, and they don't sit back and just think about the bigger picture and what needs to happen. On a more macro level, and that can be a real problem, I think, for people.
So the kind of the next question I have for you is revolving around like mantras and language that you tell yourself. And from a mantras and language perspective, this is something like, just as like an example, at one of the leadership summits I was recently at, they had this guy would tell himself, you belong in any room that you walk into. I mean, just things like that. And I just was like, wow, like that's incredible. And And so I found like over the years, there's been like different mantras that have really resonated with me. But are there any mantras or language that you tell yourself, regularly or periodically that I think bring a lot of life to what you do?
I think what we discussed relative to recognizing one's own weaknesses, I think is important. Once again, that's just, to me, not that you dwell on them, but you understand that we are going to make mistakes, that not every decision is going to be the right decision. So I think to me, the mantra is, and this is something that I was preached at a young age and was really ingrained, and that is strictly working hard. It is to get up every day and put tremendous effort in whatever you're doing. And that's just, people think of working hard as, that person's, maybe spending 12 hours a day in the office or whatever the case may be. I look at it as just kind of set the world on fire every day, because there's no guarantees. I was at a client at age 58. I was at his funeral a little bit over a month ago.
Wow.
And I look at your father. My dad died at 62. And so for me at age 51, if I was to follow that path, that means I have 11 years left.
Yeah.
Okay, now I'm not saying that's going to happen, but I think we're not here forever, and so if we get up every day and say everything I'm going to do, I'm going to put maximum effort into, we're going to make the world better. Our kids need to see that out of us, and that's another thing. I have older children, but I have some younger children as well. A total of 6 kids. And
God help you.
I want my kids to see productive, hardworking examples. And when you get into families where there may be some wealth, there may be some success, I think the toughest thing to do is to keep that from the kids and teach them the hard way to go about being successful in life. And that is not giving them stuff, but teaching them what they need to do to do well in life.
We got a lot of young leaders that are listening to this podcast, and I'd say picture a young you, and I'm sure you could probably picture your kids and everything else too. But what kind of advice do you have for the next generation? What would it be?
I would say you don't necessarily have to be patient. That you can achieve a strong level of success at an early age. You do have to believe that you have what it takes to get it done. I think that's critical. There were periods in my past, as I reflect back into my 20s, into my 30s, where it just took me a while to really believe that this person could become a client of mine, because you put them on a pedestal, and when you do that, it's a mental hurdle to try to get through. And so it's really understanding that you do have the capabilities to drive and get yourself in a tremendous position at a young age. The other thing I would tell young people is there are no shortcuts either, so that there are going to be terrible periods, no matter how you look at it. I look at my career and thinking back to 08, 09, and that period that everybody, the whole world went through, horrible, near depression, moments for organizations, and it was very, very difficult. And that was tied with also, and for me and my wife, a real personal challenge that we had with our family, and so you're going to have dark days. And with those dark days, you have to hold on to what you know to be true, and you have to believe that there will be a better day.
Yeah.
And I remember being at a microphone back in February of 09 when, it seemed like this thing was just never going to end. And just reminding everybody that it's always darkest before dawn, and having to believe that there would be a dawn, there would be a better day, and that eventually does show up. And so that was pretty powerful.
With any sort of business or company in general, we're gonna face challenges, and so I think it'd be important to hear some of the biggest challenges that you faced in your career, maybe in life and career. But what are some of those biggest challenges? And I think more importantly, how did you navigate through some of those challenges?
Yeah, so referencing that 08-09 period again, and a little bit a deeper dive there, there was a tremendous, horrendous recession that folks remember well, and it went on longer and went deeper than anything we've seen since the Great Depression. So in terms of my professional life, it was exceptionally challenging helping clients navigate that, and serving them it was really difficult, because you start to actually, when things get really rough, you start to even question some of the basics at times, like am I giving the right advice to people as it relates to their finances. And so the second piece, it was I'll never forget this period, but once again, February of 2009, when the market was at its depth at that period of time. At the same time, for my wife and I, we had gone through a IVF procedure to have a child, and that happened in 2008, but there were embryos that were left over after that were frozen. And we went to have additional children, and we did what they call an embryo transplant at that point to my wife. And we found out 10 days later that she was pregnant, but the lab had made a mistake and transferred another couple's embryos to my wife. So we had a period of time where the stress level at my job was off the chart, and then our personal stress level with my wife ultimately carrying a child that we made the choice for her. She made the choice to have the child, and we also made the decision that we would hand the child over to the biological parents at childbirth. And for any parent, the idea of your wife delivering a child, and you as the father handing that child immediately over to another couple for life, is the most unnatural thing that I will ever do in my life. And happening at a time where the personal and just loss that we were dealing with through that, at the same time dealing with professional significant challenges, really tested our mettle as people, and how we were going to move forward through what we thought was the darkest moment that we could ever face. It's something that was so extraordinary in terms of an event, and that we just had to work through that. And so I believe with longevity in any business or any life, you will face really difficult challenges. And so that's where experience does help. So if somebody throws to me something now that might be or appear to be pretty difficult, I've got a deep well of really painful stuff that we've gone through and successfully, I think, made our way to the other side. And so when you have that to dwell on, I think that that's when I tell younger people, make sure you're tapping into people that have the experience. Make sure you're surrounding yourself with people that have been through some of these periods of time, these decades of experience, because you can look at somebody and I remember growing up and you talk to somebody that's in World War II that went through that and maybe flew a bomber, was flying over Japan or over Europe. It's like, can you imagine what that would have been like? And with having us as humans not tap into those folks with that type of experience when we have the opportunity to do so. So I think that's important. Somebody that thinks they have all the answers, somebody that thinks that they know everything, I think they're going to be soundly mistaken when they run into some of these really tough challenges in their career and their life personally. So
I love that. I love how you're even talking about using those challenges as a way to serve other people in the future. I think that's an amazing perspective and an amazing way to flip the bad circumstances and then ultimately use that as a way to be a light for somebody. So that's incredible. What are some of the biggest leadership kind of errors that you see in young leaders, and what's some of your advice for kind of navigating some of these leadership issues?
Yeah, I think kind of the know-it-all, I think is something that, because in life we can have tailwinds at times where it seems like everything goes well. You know, you could make a mistake and it doesn't have any impact, you know. And then there are times where the headwinds are so strong, you can make the best strategic decision and you still feel like you're not making ground. So I think that for younger leaders, making sure that, once again, that they are surrounding themselves with the experience and tapping into it. And I also think just listening is really important. We have what we call huddles with our team, and it is dedicated time that we set aside every 2 weeks, where we do not talk about the day-to-day, the every moment activities. We have a list of bigger picture items, projects that we have going, things that are beyond that day-to-day rat race, that we make sure we're just spending time talking about those and moving those forward as we go along. And once again, it is taking that time. So I think young leaders, it's the advice that the CEO gave me. It's just taking time to think, taking time to make sure that you're not so much in that moment to moment. And I find that sometimes the electronic devices can be really negative from the standpoint of, if we're looking at email every second or trying to respond, we're getting caught up in that, and we're losing maybe, the bigger picture that we need to make sure we're concentrating on, so that when we look back over periods of time, we can see major advances. Major advances usually do not happen in the day-to-day. You have to usually take dedicated time to say, I want to get here with this. And it's almost like a special project to help you get there.
So when we look at, from a culture perspective, how, if you were to look at like some of the best companies and some of the best cultures out there, what are some tips and tricks that you have to create an engaging, flourishing, and ultimately successful culture in a company?
Well, every organization's the length and shadow of one person. Okay, so the person at the top of the organization has to be somebody of ultimate character. And because they set the tone for everything else. Yeah. When you see a rotten organization, I will show you a rotten CEO at the top. It doesn't come from underneath. It comes from the top. Yeah. And when you see a culture that is you can actually feel the difference. Yeah. It's coming from the top. And it's all, it's who they hire, it's how they train, and it's what they share with their team every single day that goes throughout the organization. Yeah. And so that's critical.
So starting at the top, having the top leader kind of set the tone, and then, from there, obviously what you're saying is each person that they're hiring needs to be the right person as well. Because if any one of them is out of line, then that culture in that area is going to feel kind of the same thing.
Absolutely, and also setting the mission and the vision the way it needs to be. At our organization, our vision is to improve the lives of all we serve. Yeah. Okay, so that's different than a transaction-oriented mentality. Yeah. It is everybody we come in contact with, and it's not just the customers. It is the coworkers. It is the custodian at night that comes by to pick up your garbage out of your office. It is it's everybody you look at them as you're serving them. How can you improve their life at that moment?
Yeah.
And so I think that's important.
It's very good. So I have to end on this question. What kind of financial advice do you have for the next generation? And it could be technical stuff, it could be big picture, whatever direction you want to go. But what kind of financial advice for the next generation?
Well, it'll come down to the absolute basics, and that is saving. Having the discipline of saving sets everything else up much better as you go through life. And if you develop that habit, I was fortunate to grow up in a house where my dad, the founder of Savage and Associates, taught me at age 5 the value of saving and going and setting up a bank account and understanding the importance of putting money away. And I became fascinated with that at a young age. And so it became a true interest of me at age 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And it's something that if I tell anybody, even if you look at your situation and you're doing really well and you have children or grandchildren, get them in that same habit. And my kids will tell you, they got their piggy banks and they get their money in their piggy banks from different things. And then we do go to the bank on occasion, and they put the money in the bank and they get to see how much they have. And I think those basics lead to a life where someone's much more cognizant of finance and the importance of it. And if it does it, those habits aren't started at a young age. I think they're much more difficult to pick up at an older age.
Very good. Very good, Sean. Well, hey, I appreciate your time today.
Sure.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome.
Appreciate it.
Well, hopefully you guys found value in today's episode. I could tell you my top takeaway was his weakness analogy. When you focus on your weaknesses, you're going to have really strong weaknesses. And I know for me, that is so true. And so I always try to make sure that I'm focusing on things that I know I'm really good at, surrounding myself with people who are fantastic at all those things that I am not great at. If you guys did enjoy this episode, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. And as always, thanks so much for being a part of our leadership community, and look forward to seeing you guys on the next one.